Story 1. In today's story, a disillusioned woman divorces her husband of 17 years and goes on to increase her body count only to end up regretting her choices. My name is Ronald, and I'm 51 years old. My ex-wife Kathy is 47. We have two sons, one is 18 and the other is 19. I work at a consulting firm where we help with financial investments. I make good money, but I have to work hard for it. Let me tell you about my ex-wife. She's beautiful and was a wonderful wife for 17 years. She took care of our kids, planned our holidays, and was the star of family gatherings. I've always tried to be a good provider for my family because as a husband, I believe that's my responsibility. I spent many hours in the office and traveled thousands of miles to make sure my family has the best and can enjoy a great life. My wife was beautiful and she took good care of her appearance. She worked out regularly and I supported her by paying for her breast implants and some facial procedures, including regular Botox shots. As beautiful as she is, my wife isn't very skilled in areas that don't relate to her strengths, like car repairs, household tasks, and financial matters. She excelled in finding the best dresses and where to get them, which made her happy. There were occasions when she became frustrated and irritable if things didn't go her way, but one thing is certain, she loves her kids deeply after our 16th wedding anniversary. Things didn't go very smoothly. The COVID-19 pandemic had a major impact on the global economy. My income decreased, and when income goes down, spending logically should too. But my wife had a different perspective. She was unhappy because she couldn't go shopping for new clothes or meet her friends during the pandemic. Once the pandemic was over, she returned to her usual habits, but her attitude seemed a bit changed. I knew I had to work hard to get things back on track, so some aspects of our home life had to take a back seat. My wife started using TikTok to pass the time at home, and surprisingly, she gained a significant fan following on the platform. Over time, my wife grew more distant from me. I tried to spend time with her, but she preferred making TikTok videos and sharing updates about her day. I watched her videos occasionally, and I started to have concerns. Her videos became darker in tone, discussing freedom and women's oppression. In one video, she praised Mia Khalifa for her ability to collect wedding rings and keep Tom Brady on his toes, which raised more worries for me. I had a conversation with Kathy that I'll never forget. She asked for a divorce, and I was shocked. It felt like all those years of love and togetherness were falling apart. I asked her why she wanted a divorce, and she said she didn't feel loved and thought we shouldn't be together because we were incompatible. She mentioned that she didn't think we looked good as a couple anymore. I realized I hadn't had time to work out due to my demanding job, and I'm not particularly athletic over time. I had gained some weight. I never saw my wife as a trophy to be paraded, and I never imagined I'd be discarded, just because I didn't look good next to her after 17 years of marriage. I cried all night and felt lost about what to do. I offered to get in better shape, but she declined and said that she needed to feel loved and wanted to explore the world. I warned her that she had never tried to do things on her own in years, and that she might face challenges she wasn't prepared for. I told her that she should reconsider and understand that at the age of 47, the world outside the security of her home could be tough. Kathy didn't change her decision. I called my sons and told them about their mother's decision. They were also shocked and expressed their concerns for her well-being, were worried because there have been several incidents where Kathy tried to do things on her own. For example, she once filled the car with vegetable oil instead of engine oil, which cost me thousands of dollars to get fixed. So you can see why we're so concerned about her. I tried my best to change Kathy's mind, but she had set her heart on the path to freedom and love. The thought of checking if she was cheating on me did cross my mind, but I chose not to investigate further because I knew it would only increase my pain. I sat down with my lawyer and asked them to prepare the divorce papers. Kathy and I never had a joint account, so most of my money was in a trust for my son's education and potential business ventures. I didn't have a substantial amount of money in my personal account. I paid Kathy a significant sum by selling our home, and she was fine with it. I've reached a point where I've decided not to waste any more time with Kathy. I've come to understand that my intense desire to make her happy may have played a role in her decision to leave, and I'm ready to focus on the next chapter of my life. Kathy and I got divorced the day we met at the court. I asked her one last time if she understood the consequences of her actions. She replied that she was there for her freedom and would soon be soaring high in the sky after our divorce. Kathy moved to a new apartment that she leased, while I continued with my life and eventually bought a small apartment. A few days later, one of my colleagues, Maria, asked me out for dinner, and I agreed. Over the next few weeks, we started dating. Maria was an intelligent and good-looking woman. Meanwhile, Kathy continued with her video content. One day, I stumbled upon a video where Kathy was explaining why she got divorced. She mentioned that she didn't feel loved, and after 17 years of marriage, she wanted to explore and find love. Many of her followers cheered and left approving comments. When I checked these followers, I noticed that most of them were middle-aged women. It seems that like-minded people tend to come together. I had a feeling that Kathy would soon come to understand what it means to be single, and I didn't have to wait long for it to happen. In one of her videos, she expressed her concerns about managing daily tasks like taking out the garbage, changing a light bulb, and ensuring her car was serviced on time. In her next video, she explained that she was now looking for a date and even shared her Tinder profile and asked people to write swiper. She mentioned that she would choose who would be lucky enough to date her. I was disgusted and didn't expect her to go to such lengths. A week later, there was another video where she was explaining why her new boyfriend is now her ex-boyfriend. She explained that her ex-boyfriend was interested in only getting in her pants. She was giggling, and it seems that even though she got pumped, and dumped, she did not find that disgusting. The very thought that the mother of my kids is now being pumped by Tinder Sims in just a few days, she returned with another video, stating that men were only interested in one-night stands with her. She also laughed about her experiences with 2 or 3 nightstands. It seemed like her standards were falling rapidly, akin to the fall of Enron stocks. On the other hand, my relationship with Maria was going strong. We planned a trip for Memorial Day with my 2 sons and went out as a family. I didn't inform Kathy because I felt that she no longer deserved to be with us. My sons posted some of our pictures together on Instagram, and Kathy saw them. It seems she didn't like what she saw her comment on the pictures saying, "I gave birth to you," and always remember that didn't sit well with her kids. My younger son disliked her comments and removed them. A day later, she went on a rant on TikTok, expressing how she didn't feel loved and how she hadn't been given the opportunity to work outside her home. She even mentioned that she felt like a prisoner in her own home, and how she felt oppressed after her kids were born, having to take care of them full-time. She continued by saying how I had accumulated a lot of money and hadn't shared it with her. She mentioned that she felt nearly broke and believed she had been betrayed in the divorce. She cried and talked about spending Memorial Day alone, watching other people with their families. I guess Chad and Tyrone were busy with their families and left Kathy alone. Yes, I made a lot of money, and I worked hard for it. I earned the money for the sake of my kids, and my ex-wife Kathy chose to leave behind a life of luxury and paid the price, even though she had been warned about the consequences in her next video. I saw that she had a black eye. She said that she was assaulted because her Tinder date was not well behaved. This happened at a bar when he got drunk and angry after she asked him to drink less. The police arrested her Tinder date. She said she'd stop online dating and only date people she meets at local shopping centers, hoping to find gentlemen who would ask her out. I had doubts about a gentle gem approaching a 47-year-old woman for a date, but Sims would surely approach her only for a pump and dump session. I've proposed to Maria, and we're getting married. My sons approve and are happy for me. I've kept Kathy unaware of it because I didn't want to interact with her now. She's nothing more than a cheap source of entertainment for me. A few days later, I saw Kathy dance on TikTok in her undergarments, and I guess a lot of people had a treat. A day later, one of my colleagues asked me if my ex-wife, and if she has any mental issues. I got angry and told him to connect with Kathy. I did not understand why he is asking me that I had missed a video from Kathy where she was crying and saying she wished that she had stayed in her marriage and not divorced me. She said that she misses her gentleman husband and her dear sons. She added that after getting divorced, she has not got any love, and men only were with her for cheap thrills, and one night stands there was number love, and she is now miserable. She's thinking about returning to her home with her family. She knows that her husband will surely forgive her and take her back. Well, Kathy, that boat has sailed and now has new sailors. You made your bed outside the safety of your home. Now better sleep in it. I warned you, I reminded you and pleaded with you, but you were adamant and hell-bent. On searching for your so-called love and freedom. Your disillusion made you crazy. Your so-called followers made you feel like you made a great choice when you were gone. I got a great partner and found real love. You, on the other hand, were just adding to your body count all the best, and I hope you don't even dream of coming back to me. I, an investment expert, not a junkyard dog. I got married in a private ceremony with only my sons and some very close family members, and friends Kathy somehow got to know about my marriage and barged into the middle of my marriage, and it was almost a mayhem. She started screaming and was almost about to destroy the wedding cake. She was stopped by my sons, and their security escorted her out of that venue. She waited outside the venue, and when I came out, she started hurling abuses that I deceived her and abandoned her. She blamed me for her misery and broke down crying. She got up again and was about to throw a stone on Maria when my younger son caught her hand and stopped her. My elder son called the cops, and she was arrested. I almost burst out laughing when I overheard someone talking about Kathy's actions at my marriage and described her as a level 47 Karen. We later got a restraining order against her, and I hope that will keep her away from us. It has been 6 months, and I'm on vacation with Maria in Paris. Life is good. Oh yes, I still see Kathy on TikTok, and I still enjoy her crazy rants. Story 2. Me and my now fiancé have lived in this house and neighborhood for a few months now. I have a 1-year-old son myself, so I know how kids can be. However, my neighbors have 3 children, a 9, 12, and a 14-year-old. All of them are boys. At first, they weren't too much trouble. I would just see them running around throwing sticks, riding scooters across the street, but as of recently, they've started getting a lot closer to my property. This all started with the oldest one throwing various trash into our yard that my fiancé would continually have to pick up. Then all 3 kids started digging holes in our yard, banging on our door, and I even caught them trying to pick my front door with a bobby pin. This has happened 4 to 5 times already. Of course, I brought this up with their mother, who's done very little about it. They seem to have very little supervision, and apparently Child Protective Services had already been called numerous times because of how often they seem to be left alone. I warned the mother that we have 2 big dogs whose sole purpose was to protect against intruders. So if their son happens to actually get into my house, they would probably end up hurt. I did not want these little children to end up hurt, of course, which was why I was warning her. She brushed it off, saying, if anything happened to her boys, she would have me promptly arrested and my dog spit down. So I decided to take matters into my own hands to ensure the safety of these boys, as expected. The oldest one and his brothers were sneaking around my yard again. I waited until they got closer to the front door when the second youngest opened the door. I said a command to my dogs and they ran out immediately, barking and growling. All the boys screamed and started yelling. They ran and ran all the way until they got to their house, getting wet by the lawn sprinklers on the way. I called my dogs back. They stopped at the end of the lawn like I trained them to. We didn't hear much for a few days. Their mother and the police came knocking at the door. She said some stuff about how my dogs bit her child, and I was a danger to the neighbors. But I showed this security footage from my camera to the police, and it pretty much died down from there. She's still trying to keep the case open, but I feel like I've done little to no wrong here. Her boys don't bother us, and the children aren't hurt, and we're never going to be. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I did tell the police that they were attempting to break into my house. It was obvious from the video too. I just decided not to press charges, considering the only reason they're acting like this is because they have a neglectful mother from your comments. I've decided to do all I can to get those boys out of there for those who are saying my dogs are aggressive. Maybe I'll can't sleep unless she chews on her stuffy repeatedly, and Robbie is scared of spoons. Oh my God, you let your trained dogs out into your own yard. What a criminal, and you let them bark at your children. You're just a monster, aren't you? And security footage, so you admit to recording young boys without their knowledge, predator. Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time a dog was hurt because a neighbor didn't like them. I wouldn't put it past her to throw poisoned meat into the garden or something. Not the a-hole. I had a beautiful Norwegian elkhound when I was a kid, and she never left our fenced-in backyard. But she would bark if the neighbors got too close to the fence. I came home from school one day to find her in the backyard. She hated me inside when it was cool out, dying with a pool of antifreeze next to her, considering my parents kept her chained to the dock house when we were gone. I know this was the 80s, and their rule I would never leave one of my dogs outside unattended. There's no way she could have gotten into something. Someone purposefully poisoned her. But we had no way to prove who it was, although we suspected the neighbor since he never liked my parents. It's horrible what some people do, not the a-hole they were trespassing and harassing you. The mother is useless now. You should take the footage back to the police and say you'd like to press charges for breaking and entering and trespassing, etc. No way should those kids get away with it scot-free, just like a post from a couple of days ago where the original poster took a ball that had been thrown at his child by a bully and punted it into a neighbor's yard. This was an object lesson. Those kids need a wake-up call. What you did got their attention, but most certainly didn't damage them in any way. This is another example of how some people expect the village to raise their children until the village isn't putting up with their crap anymore. Not the a-hole. These children need to learn real-life consequences of what they're doing before they do it to someone's house or yard that may be the type to shoot. First, you just parented them more than their mother. Obviously, keep the cameras up. Keep documenting them intruding on your property. For the sake of this case, I would just call the cops anytime they're trespassing to have it documented formally now, and continue to do so. Also, good doggies, buy them a big bone for me. Next story. My Jack Tent is very quiet. He likes to read. He likes the quiet. He likes bright visuals and museums. He didn't speak for a long time. He loves to learn, and he's got a tiny group of friends, but he's happy and always looking for more. Jack is autistic and doesn't like much noise. Jack met James at the playground. We go to James's deaf, and he got a serious case of helicopter mom. They waved and talked and ran around before we left. And we've been almost every day since they've seen each other because James is deaf and isn't extremely loud and understands that about Jack. They've become very good friends. Jack came to the conclusion that James can read and write like him, and so he got a little pen and notebook and he had me put him on YouTube so that he could try and learn some sign language. Friend, play, run. Would you like to go with me to hello and other friendly things? And now they're best friends. Jack recently had the idea that because James can't hear, they have to do things with seeing. We live near a big, beautiful aquarium. And Jack had the idea that we could all go together. Me and my husband would be with James's parents, and they could be actual friends outside the playground setting. I approached James's mother to ask them yesterday, and she informed me that she didn't want the boys to get too close because James is deaf, and they don't want to make him too many friends that aren't, because he's already at a disadvantage and doesn't want him to be left out. I informed her that her son would be going to public school and entering the world. He'd have to get used to being deaf and having all sorts of friends, and all she was doing was pushing away the friends that he could be making and being selfish while not looking after what her son wanted. I don't know what exactly happened, but I got a call last night from James's father while James screaming in the background and everything has been set up. We're going with him and his wife's stepmom on Friday and calling it a day. We all wear masks and have a nice outing, and it's all completely fine. The boys are both extremely excited to go together. I saw his mom at the playground this morning, and she was quite aggressive, telling me I should have never set up the playdate, and involving her ex-husband. I told her that if she only thought of her feelings, there was a good reason her son had to go to his dad to be able to see his friend, and I walked away from her. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You handled it calmly on your end and didn't overstep anywhere. The dad stepped up and thankfully did the responsible thing for his son, although your tone of delivery could swing that a little, like if you were aggressive in your face and confrontational with it, then a very soft a-hole for a delivery. Not content of what you said, your son sounds like a great friend to James. The fact Jacques wanted to learn a sign language to communicate better and suggested ideas for activities they could both enjoy equally is amazing. James's dad called you to set up the play date. His mom sounds like she has some control issues. Sheltering will hold James back and likely disadvantage him for more, which is a real shame. Parents don't like to hear that they might not be doing what's best for their kids, but sometimes they really aren't. Not the a-hole. And also, you're raising a wonderful kid. I don't claim to understand much about the difficulties that deaf and hard of hearing people might run into, but I have a couple of deaf friends who have told me about issues they had with overprotective parents like this when they were young. They had such a hard time opening up with me and becoming friends with me because they just weren't used to it without their parents' interference. Keep in mind, deaf culture may be very different from hearing culture. You and I might be used to try to be patient as your child may begin to navigate two different cultures in close proximity. I'm the parent of a deaf child wanting him to have deaf friends, Makes sense, not wanting him to have hearing friends. Doesn't. My son went to a school for the deaf from kindergarten through 8th grade. He switched to public school in high school because he wanted to attend a mainstream college and thinks her high-scoring public schools will prepare him better, and he wanted to go to the same school as his siblings. He is profoundly deaf and communicates in ASL, but he has deaf friends and hearing friends. He plays sports for his high school with hearing kids and skateboards with another group of hearing friends. He still has friends from his old school and got together with a couple a few weeks ago. There's nothing wrong with interacting with both. He'll need to be able to do that in order to function in society. Not the EHO. A kid is a kid with a disability or not. They deserve the same chance of being a kid with friends as any other, and I applaud you for making your child have a normal childhood, and for reaching out to his child's other parent and helping him to have a semblance of a childhood as well. That is true parenting. Next story. I'm 17, female, and my parents are separated. My dad lives in another country, so I don't see him much, except for holidays. He lives in Germany with my stepmom and 9-year-old sister. I don't like my stepmom at all. Mainly because of her parenting style. She's a complete helicopter parent. I don't think my sister has ever actually been out of an adult side in her life. She's never just played outside with her friends or anything. And the most annoying thing for me is that she's never eaten a hot meal, like it's cold being served to her, and the reasoning is it might burn her mouth. She's also never stayed up past 7 p.m. Things that apply to my sister also apply to me when I'm with my dad. I'm usually there for 2+ weeks at a time, and in that entire time, I don't eat anything hot, and I'm pretty much confined to my room, which has a bed, and that's it. After 7, I can live having to stay in my room, but not with being fed cold food. I have avoidant restrictive food intake disorder and an already limited diet. I can barely stomach food, warm, let alone cold. Yesterday, my dad rang me about booking flies for the summer, and I said no. He tried to guilt me into going, and I said I'm not going unless I'm treated like I should be. I told him I will not be going unless everything I eat is hot, and I don't care if it means eating before my sister and that I won't be subjected to her stupid rules anymore. My dad contacted my mom, and my mom said I was an a-hole to act so spoiled. Am I the a-hole, not the Ejo? While cold pizza is food of the gods, every meal for 2 weeks is torture. Try to work it out so you can spend time with your father, even if you have to warm everything yourself. Are you expected to go to bed at 7 p.m. at age 17? You need to explain to your dad that this is not normal. Also, say you'd like to prepare your own food to fit into your dietary requirements. Get your mom to teach you before you go, if you don't know how. Explain what you've said here to your mom and get her to back you up when she speaks with your dad. Good luck, not the a-hole. Have you tried explaining the full situation to your mom? Regardless, your dad is refusing to compromise, and his rules will mean that it is not a viable place for you to stay. There are plenty of ways to manage this, like letting you cook your own meals as you're 17. But if he's not willing to compromise, then you're not willing to put yourself in a miserable position. This original poster is transitioning into an adult. She should be allowed to make some decisions like what to eat and the temperature that said 9-year-olds are able to eat hot foods. In fact, many 9-year-olds can operate a toaster, kettle, microwave, they can cook 2-minute noodles, etc. for themselves. Stepmom is abusing her child. Food is such an integral part of most people's lives. But stepsis may grow up to be on the fringes, not knowing the rules that everyone else knew. By 9, not the a-hole. Your stepmom is an abusive control freak. Being safe has nothing to do with it. She gets off on making people she has power over miserable, and your dad enables her. Her rules are abusive as hell for a 9-year-old as well. The 9-year-old will never be a functioning adult. She's missed many crucial development milestones. Watch that you don't get shoved into the caretaker role for her in the next 10 years. I would never go back. Yes, why has no one talked about this? The issue is that the child is not being treated like a child, not allowed to play with friends, eat quality food, etc. Original poster has nothing in the room but a bed and is made up to be in his room at 7 p.m. This is all pretty messed up. You're an adult at 18. You just don't go. You were right to choose not the a-hole. I'm concerned for the 9-year-old's awful living situation though, which just sounds so controlled it's going to mess her up. This is abusive. Surely. Next story. Our son just graduated college. He was extremely studious in high school and was able to get a full scholarship to the school of his choice. The college fund we saved for him, therefore, went untouched. Our daughter is a couple years older than our son. Despite our best efforts, She was never the greatest student. So while she was able to go to college, she received no scholarship money. The college fund we saved for her, which actually amounted to a little more than we saved for our son, covered about half of her tuition, with loans making up the rest. Our son did extremely well in college and graduated with a great job. We therefore decided to gift him his college fund to use as a down payment on a house, and with the stock markets gained over the last 4 years. It's grown quite a bit since he went off to school. Our daughter was furious when she found out that our son's college fund went towards him buying a house. She said that he's already way ahead of her in life since he graduated debt-free with a much better paying job than our daughter's, and it's not fair to put him even further ahead. She maintains a fair thing to have done is to have put our son's fund towards paying off her loans. Both my husband, our son, and I think our daughter is being entitled. But she has told some of her extended family how unfair we're being and they're taking her aside. Are we somehow the unfair ones here? I'm inclined to say not the a-hole. This is a classic fair versus equal issue. Fair would say that both kids graduate debt-free, so as long as you have money to do so, that is, everyone gets what they need, regardless of who needs more. While equal would say that each kid gets the same amount, regardless of need. Neither is wrong, and your kids aren't owed a college fund. You're already being very generous. It's really up to you whether you choose to be fair or to be equal. You choose equal. Each kid gets their own fund, and that's completely valid. Most will choose equal to giving the child the same amount regardless of who needs it more. My friend's parents chose fairness, leaving their money to their social worker son rather than the daughter married to a well-paid executive, but needs change, and he left her cleaning out all their accounts. He did have to share assets eventually, but she did not get alimony, have to be married 20 years in my state, and her standard of living is now lower than her brother's. No a-holes here, although gifting your son money that was earmarked for college for a different purpose was likely going to lead your other child feeling shafted, but you already told him that you could have it. So it is what it is. I don't even think it's entitlement. She probably did her best. You didn't mention she screwed around in school and has the burden of debt, so it's going to be difficult to watch her brother not have any debt and get a house as a parent. I would have prioritized my kids getting through school with the same amount of, or no debt, and then if I give them anything for a house, it would also be equal amounts. The fact that one kid was academically gifted and got scholarships wouldn't have factored in. It's a bit like punishing the average one for being average, not the a-hole. The goal of college funds isn't to have complete equity of outcomes. It's to provide the same resources for each kid. Kids will have different scholarships or differently priced schools, and that will impact how far their funds go. Presumably, you'd do the same for your daughter if the situation was flipped exactly. Our son, a top student in high school, chose to go to a very expensive school. And even with scholarships, graduated with $30,000 in loans. Our daughter, who didn't want to work as hard in school, chose to go to a less expensive school, managed to get 2 small scholarships for her last 2 years, and graduated with nearly $10,000 left in her 529 account. Not much toward a down payment, but it's a decent start. Life's about choices, original posters. Daughter needs to live with hers. You. Story 3. My husband abandoned me while I was in labor, and later my brother told him I didn't make it. Now, my husband wants me to cut my brother off my husband, and I got into a heated argument just a week before our daughter was born. The whole thing started when he casually suggested that we get a paternity test for our daughter. Once she arrived, to be clear, this accusation was completely out of the blue with no prior incidents or reasons to justify his suspicion. I am a homebody who works remotely, with no close male friends apart from my brother. I don't go out much, and my interaction with other men are virtually non-existent. When he first brought it up, I was taken aback and deeply hurt. I couldn't believe that he would question my fidelity, especially so close to my due date. I told him that he was essentially accusing me of cheating on him, which was not only unfounded, but also incredibly insulting. Instead of understanding my point of view or apologizing, he doubled down on his request, claiming that he just wanted to be sure this became a recurring topic over the next 3 days. Every time he brought it up, the stress of the accusation started to weigh heavily on me. I felt physically ill from the constant tension. I tried to reason with him, explaining how his unfounded doubts were affecting me, but he wouldn't relent. It felt like he was tearing down the trust and love we had built over the years. brick by brick on the third day after another exhausting round of the same argument. I reached my breaking point. I was overwhelmed with frustration and sadness. The stress was so intense that I could feel it taking a toll on my body and my mental health. In a moment of clarity, I realized that I couldn't continue to stay in an environment that was so toxic and harmful, especially not so close to giving birth. I told him that I didn't want to talk to him anymore and packed a few essentials. I left our home and went to my brother's house seeking solace and support. My brother welcomed me with open arms, offering the comfort and understanding that I desperately needed. During this time, I called my husband to try and work things out, hoping for some resolution, but he refused to engage in a constructive conversation. After all this, I decided to go back home the next day to grab some things while my husband was at work. The atmosphere at my brother's house was supportive, but I needed some personal items and baby essentials to prepare for the upcoming birth. As I walked through our home, the memories of our recent fight lingered, adding a heavy sense of sadness and frustration. While I was gathering my belongings, I suddenly felt a sharp, intense pain in my abdomen. The realization hit me. I was going into labor. Panic set in as the contractions grew stronger and more frequent. I needed to get to the hospital immediately. My first instinct was to call my husband, despite our unresolved issues. After all, he was the father of our child and deserved to be there for the birth. I dialed his number, but there was no answer. I called again and again, a total of 16 times, with each attempt going straight to voicemail. My heart pounded with anxiety and fear. How could he not answer? Didn't he see the urgency in my repeated calls? Each ring that went unanswered only heightened my sense of isolation and dread. Desperate and in pain, I called my brother, explaining the situation between labored breaths. He assured me that he was on his way and tried to reach my husband as well. My brother called him another half a dozen times while driving to pick me up, and then continued calling on the way to the hospital, but there was still no response. The silence from my husband was deafening, amplifying my fears and frustrations as my contractions became more intense. I clung to the hope that my husband would somehow show up. The ride to the hospital felt interminable, each bump in the road sending waves of pain through my body. My brother, trying to remain calm for my sake, drove as quickly and safely as could his wife. A nurse was on the phone guiding us through the process and preparing to meet us at the hospital. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I felt an overwhelming urge to push. We were still miles from the hospital, and it became clear that I wouldn't make it in time. My brother pulled over, and his wife instructed him over the phone on what to do in the cramped space of the back seat. I gave birth to my daughter. The pain was excruciating, and the situation was terrifying. I was bleeding heavily, and my brother's wife, who arrived just in time, helped Dell the baby, and tried to manage the situation as best as she could. By the time we reached the hospital, I was in critical condition. I was rushed into surgery to stop the bleeding and had to undergo an emergency hysterectomy. Bonding with my daughter has been incredibly hard. Each time I look at her, I feel a mixture of overwhelming love and deep sadness. She is beautiful and innocent, a light in this dark period, but I can't shake the lingering pain and trauma from her birth. Holding her, I feel the pressure to be strong and joyful, yet the memories of the emergency and the surgery keep pulling me back into a state of sorrow and exhaustion. My brother's wife has been an immense support. During this time, her medical knowledge and calm demeanor have been invaluable, but even she knows that this emotional healing will take time. The point is that while I was still groggy and recovering from surgery, 10 hours after I had first called my husband, finally responded, I was just beginning to come around, disoriented and in pain, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The nurses were bustling around, checking on me and the baby, and I could barely keep my eyes open. My brother had been by my side the entire time, his face etched with worry and exhaustion. He had my phone, handling all the calls and updates to family and friends. When my husband finally called back, my brother's face contorted with a mix of relief and anger. He couldn't believe it had taken my husband so long to respond, especially given the urgency of the situation. As he answered the phone, I could see the anger and frustration boiling over. My husband's voice came through, asking why I hadn't answered his calls. The sheer audacity of his question after hours of silence during the most critical moment of my life was too much for my brother to bear. "This is Jake," he said, his voice shaking with controlled fury. "I'm at the hospital." She didn't make it without waiting for a response. He turned off the phone, his hands trembling. My husband rushed to the hospital, arriving just as I was starting to wake up. The look on his face was a mix of panic, guilt, and desperation. He stormed into my room, his voice rising in anger and confusion. "Why didn't you answer my calls? What's going on?" He shouted, his eyes wild, before I could even process what was happening. The hospital security intervened, forcing him out of the room to prevent further distress to me. I was too weak and disoriented to fully grasp the situation, but the emotional turmoil was evident. The hospital staff explained that they needed my signature to allow him back in, but I was in and out of consciousness, barely able to focus on anything. My brother's actions, though harsh, were driven by the intense fear and helplessness he had felt during those long hours. He had watched me struggle through labor, bleeding, and in pain, all while my husband was unreachable to him. Those 10 minutes of fear he inflicted on my husband were a fraction of what he had endured. My sister-in-law thinks it was horribly cruel of my brother to tell my husband that I didn't make it, but she also believes that my husband deserved a taste of the fear and helplessness we all felt. She understands the emotional roller coaster we went through, and while she wouldn't have done it herself, she doesn't completely condemn my brother's reaction. My brother, on the other hand, stands firmly by his prank. He justifies it by saying that he only gave my husband 10 minutes of the same fear he had felt at my side for over 10 hours. He had witnessed first, and the agony and danger I was in while my husband was unreachable whenever he sees my husband. Now he doesn't hesitate to remind him that I nearly died because we waited for him. He's relentless in driving home. The point, hoping it will instill some sense of the gravity of the situation before all this. My brother was mostly indifferent to my husband. They were cordial, but not particularly close. Now the animosity is palpable. My brother absolutely hates him, and you can see it in his face. Whenever my husband enters the room, the once neutral expressions are now replaced with a deep, seething resentment. Since the birth, my brother has been visiting a lot. He doesn't trust my husband to care for me properly while I'm still healing. He makes sure that I have everything I need and helps with the baby, ensuring that I am supported during this vulnerable time. His protective nature has intensified, and he seems determined to be there for me in every way possible. My husband, on the other hand, is furious. He's outraged that my brother won't apologize for the prank and that I won't make him. He believes that I should force my brother to apologize, viewing it as a matter of principle. When I told him that the only reason my brother had my phone was because he wasn't there, he exploded in anger. He yelled at me, his frustration and guilt manifesting his rage. I'm trying to be empathetic to understand that my husband feels guilty about everything that happened. I know he's struggling with his own emotions, but his reactions make it difficult to bridge the gap between us. I've spoken to my therapist, who has suggested that the apathy I'm feeling is likely general and not solely focused on him. She thinks it's lingering shock from the trauma, a natural response to such a harrowing experience. However, she didn't say much about the prank itself, leaving me to navigate the emotional fallout on my own. My mother-in-law has been texting me to say that my family is horribly cruel for the prank and that I should go no contact with my brother, and now my husband is saying the same. I just don't know what to do. I'm not in a good headspace. It's been hard to be in the same room with my husband, and I've been sleeping in the guest room with my daughter. He brought up the paternity once, and I just exhaustedly told him to either get out of my face or go stay with his mom if he's planning on stressing me out even more. I really don't feel myself, and yes, I am taking the likelihood of PPD seriously, and my therapist, who has suggested that it may be PTSD too. However, I just want more opinions because I just don't know. This isn't a black and white issue. The fight you had was real, your anger was real, and the anger you feel at your husband is real. Your brother's prank was too far but not completely undeserving. The big issue is that everyone's pride is still seemingly involved here, and there isn't a concrete solution. When everyone is pointing fingers, I suggest waiting 2 months to see if either one party humbles themselves or to let it peak. But if they keep conflict going, let everyone know they're cut off. It's not fair to you to have to choose one or another party when it was you and labor and your life on the line. If it came to a choice at this moment, I feel like I'd choose my brother. He has never let me down and is the kind of older brother every sister wants. He rushed to my side when I needed help the most. driving me to the hospital and staying with me through the terrifying ordeal of childbirth. He took charge when my husband was unreachable. I feel guilty for feeling this way, torn between my loyalty to my husband and my gratitude towards my brother. Despite hating my husband right now, my brother has put his feelings aside to help me. He hasn't mentioned the prank or the incident, not wanting to add to my stress. He's even ignored my husband's anger, staying calm to avoid arguments that would stress me more. His actions come from love and concern for me without expecting anything in return. Even so, I still feel like I'm not seeing this clearly enough. My husband is my partner and the father of our child. We've built a life together, and my anger about everything is wrapped in trauma. The betrayal I felt when he suggested the paternity test, his absence during the birth, and his behavior afterward have all left deep emotional scars. My therapist mentioned that my apathy and numbness are likely from the trauma I experienced. Not necessarily my true feelings towards my husband. The love and history I share with my husband make this decision very difficult. I'm trying to balance my anger and disappointment with the understanding that he might be feeling guilty and overwhelmed too. But every time I remember those critical moments when I needed him the most and he wasn't there, I feel betrayed, and it clouds my judgment. My brother, on the other hand, has been consistently supportive. He's helped me through this challenging time, showing me what true support looks like. The contrast between his actions and my husband's is stark, and it's hard not to let that influence my feelings update. I don't believe this is something we can recover from. I can't imagine being able to heal alongside him, especially since he must have known it was me calling and still hasn't explained why he ignored my calls. I initially thought I would take my time to decide, but I realize now that I don't want to forget the agony of waiting for him. Convinced he wouldn't abandon me, regardless of his anger, I took the time to think back to that moment before everything went downhill. The memory is vivid and painful. I remember the contractions hitting hard and fast, each one more intense than the last. I was on my knees trying to breathe through the pain, clutching my phone as if it were a lifeline. The fear and betrayal I felt were overwhelming. With each ring that went unanswered, my sense of isolation grew. I kept hoping, praying that he would pick up, that he would be there for me in this critical moment. But each time the call went to voicemail, the reality set in deeper. He wasn't coming. I felt grossly betrayed and utterly alone. This wasn't just about a missed call. It was about trust and support at the most vulnerable moment of my life. I needed him, not just as my husband, but as my partner. The father of our child, the person I thought I could rely on unconditionally, was nowhere to be found when I needed him the most. The fear I felt wasn't just for myself, but for our unborn daughter as well. I was scared for her safety, scared of what might happen if I didn't get help in time. I've replayed that moment in my mind countless times, and each time the feelings of betrayal and loneliness wash over me anew. I just don't think there's any coming back from that. It's not something that can be easily forgiven or forgotten, and it's a breach of trust so deep that it shakes the very foundation of our relationship. I also think about my daughter, and the kind of example I want to set for her. I wouldn't want her to think it's okay to stay with a man who destroyed her trust that way. She deserves to see what a healthy, supportive relationship looks like. Staying in a relationship where trust has been shattered would send the wrong message. I want her to grow up knowing her worth and the importance of being with someone who truly values and respects her. I plan to contact an attorney and meet with them in the coming weeks. Thankfully, we have a prenup, so I hope the process won't be too difficult. This situation became even clearer when a friend asked if I would still trust him to sign off on my medical papers. My immediate reaction was a strong no. I wouldn't trust him at all. I want to remove him from that responsibility as soon as possible. Honestly, I'd trust my old college roommates more than him. I would never have ignored so many of his calls unless I had specifically told him I was unavailable, and even then, I would have been more responsive. I feel good with my brother and sister-in-law here. With me, their presence has been a huge comfort, especially with my sister-in-law being a nurse. She was there through the birth, and her medical knowledge and calm demeanor have been invaluable during my recovery. Knowing she's just a room away, if I need anything, gives me a sense of security I desperately need right now. Having them here has really helped us bond in a way we never really had time to. Before, my sister-in-law and I have always gotten along, but this experience has brought us closer. We've spent countless hours talking not just about the baby, but about life, our hopes, and our fears. She's been a sounding board for my anxieties and a source of practical advice from breastfeeding tips to managing postpartum emotions. It's a deeper connection than we've ever had, and I'm grateful for it. My brother, too, has been a pillar of strength. He's taken on so many responsibilities, from running errands to helping with the baby, and even just being there to talk to his support has been unwavering, and it's made a world of difference. He's always been my protector, but now more than ever I see the depth of his love and commitment to our family. I've also finally told my old friends about the baby, and their responses have been heartwarming. They were thrilled to hear the news and eager to help. They've started alternating visits to come and support me, bringing meals, helping with household chores, and giving me some much-needed breaks. Their presence has been a breath of fresh air, reminding me of the strong network of friends I have, even though we might not see each other as often as we used to. The camaraderie and support from my friends have lifted my spirits significantly. They've been sharing their own parenting experiences, offering advice, and just being there to listen. It's reassuring to know that I have a community that cares for me and my daughter, ready to step in whenever I need them. This collective support has been crucial for my mental and emotional well-being. It's helping me navigate the challenges of new motherhood and the complex emotions surrounding my relationship with my husband. None of this even addresses the paternity test, but I'll get it done for the legal proceedings, so he'll get what he wants anyway. I'm safe and well, and my daughter is healthy and as sweet as can be. She sleeps peacefully anywhere and nurses easily, which is such a relief, given how much everything still hurts. Making this decision has lifted a weight off my shoulders, and my sister-in-law has been wonderful in helping us bond. Thank you for letting me write this out. I'm not great at keeping diaries or journals, but writing to people feels different, and has really helped clarify things for me. Even my therapist mentioned that I seem clearer and calmer. I might give a diary another try, as she suggested. I will now move forward with divorcing him because I no longer trust him as a partner. Trust is fragile and foundational in any relationship. My husband's unfounded doubts and his suggestion for a paternity test not only hurt me deeply, but also broke the trust we had built. When trust is compromised, the entire relationship can crumble. It's essential to be with someone who believes in you, without needing constant reassurances of your loyalty and love. Enduring such a traumatic event taught me the value of emotional resilience. Despite the fear, pain, and betrayal, I had to find the strength to move forward for the sake of my daughter and myself. Life can throw unimaginable challenges your way, but you must find the inner strength to persevere and overcome them. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Story 4. My little family is made up of my dad and me and an absent mother who left us both before I could even speak. It's not a part of my life which I paid too much attention to. I didn't know her and never felt the need to seek out the presence of a motherly figure in my life. You could say that we have an ordinary life, with the exception of poverty and struggling to make ends meet. Despite the lack of financial stability or luxury, my dad and I have always had each other's back, so economic poverty never seemed to be much of a problem. It always seemed like my poor dad was working himself beyond human capabilities despite being very aware and helpful with savings. He always worked 2 or 3 jobs to provide an ordinary everyday life for me. That is, of course, until my life got turned upside down by the events that took place recently. A couple of months ago, I got a call from a construction site that I worked at with my dad, informing me that there was an accident at work and that my father's life being taken away had been the consequence of a machine malfunctioning. The news struck me like a lightning bolt, as I had had breakfast with my dad just that morning and never even considered the possibility of it being the last time I would see him. I was born with the guilt of not cherishing our final moments enough before dwelling upon the fact that I would probably never see him again. Emotions blinded my actions, and I zoomed through the funeral, hardly mentally present and certainly emotionally devastated. After the funeral, I was the destination of my dad's lawyer. A couple of days later, he came up to me and informed me that my dad had written a will. I didn't think much of it and knew that it was going to be a small sum of money. The car and some other belongings. He told me that my dad had left me all of his belongings, including the house car and the money in his savings account. My breath caught in my throat as the lawyer told me that he had $2.1 million stacked up in his account tax, without the mention of anyone else. It took me a while to process what the lawyer had just informed me, but it clearly took me by surprise. I got all sorts of flashbacks of my dad barely making ends meet and struggling each month to pay rent on time and provide food and house expenses. There was no way he would have invested any money or won the lottery or even stolen any of it. He was a man of integrity that didn't believe in luck. He had the morals and principles of an underestimated genius but hard-working man. That's how he lived his life, and he made sure to preach it to me every single living day. Although I'm still mourning over the death of my father and unable to process that, I've become a millionaire overnight at the expense of my father's life. The company that he lost his life working at has already paid out $50,000 in compensation, as it's a fairly small one, and the problem wasn't anyone's fault, it was a machine malfunctioning. I can't help the nagging voice in the back of my head constantly steering me towards seeking answers and finding out how my poor dad left me $2.1 million of inheritance out of nowhere. Update: many months have passed, and I've been unable to spend any of the money. Not only have I been able to accept that my dad is actually dead and that I'm all alone in the world, and I still struggle to go to sleep each night as a calm, quiet background noise urges me to find out what happened and how my father managed to land such a large sum of money. I had to sit and think of a solid plan to make sure my dad's name wasn't dragged to the mud in case there were illegal activities involved. Still, I also needed to find the answers no matter what, because it was becoming a focal point in my life that's just been keeping me from living ordinarily after experiencing such a loss after many days of contemplation and planning. I decided to get myself together, clean myself up, and give myself a proper shave before heading down to the bank, where I am to sniff out my first clues. I decided against hiring a private investigator because I wanted things to remain discreet and extra personal. I trusted that the plan I had was solid enough. If Aid had inherited any bit of my father's genius, then this will be a short-lived investigation that will give the answers I'm seeking and allowing myself to go back to life in the most ordinary way possible. I got to the bank that day and asked for all the transactions that my dad's account had been involved in since I technically owned it. Now that I have all of his legal belongings, including the bank account, I covered it up by saying that I needed to settle his debts for religious purposes, and they seemed to be sold on it for all I cared. What was on the reports was even more confusing because he had been sent a large sum of money from different corporations and companies that I slowly started to recognize as places he mentioned working for at some point or the other. They all started that. The letter they should explain air sincerest of sorrows and hoped that the money would provide some relief of damage they had caused. It was all alongside lines, but none of the financial reports or signed documents stated why those complaints were sending my dad such large sums of money that day had ended with me far more confused than I was when it started. What did they mean, and what were they apologizing for? Was my dad involved in some sort of drug-dealing ring? Why else would they send him the equivalent of $2.1 million in a country where people struggle to pay for healthy meals? I decided that the next thing to do was to contact each one of those companies, claiming that the letters had been lost in the post and requesting another version to be sent out. I waited for a few days as each one of those emails started getting responses, and my letterbox was filling up as they did so. When I finally got the courage to read them, I sat on my couch aware of the possibility that my dad might not have been a good man and that the contents of those letters might ruin the way I view him. My anxiety was getting the best of me, and my suspicions had finally been cleared out when I realized that there was nothing to hide in them. They all explained that they were sorry for having hired terrible employees or for purchasing cheap pieces of machinery and cutting down medical endurance for the newbies. Each one of those letters had a reason to be sorry, and based on it sent money sum that ranged from what amounts to $100,000 to what anointed $1 million. They all had one thing in common. They all apologized for having been responsible for taking my dad's life, their slackness or cheap who had led to his death, and that the money was invoiced to his bank account was included in his recruitment contract. It was starting to make sense after all, only there was no chance my father would have died over 30 times. His body was recovered from the work field of the building company I was supposed to work in with him, and that the company had compensated me for $50,000, no more, and no less. How and why were all of these people throwing crap sums of money at my dad? When they were PNG corporates taking his life, I decided to pursue my quest for truth and made a list of the closest work fields which belonged to the companies that had sent me money and headed towards them, one by one in the following week. Again, I requested that they show me where my dad supposedly took his last breath, and they all showed me different places under a machine, in between walls, in small gaps, or underneath pickup trucks. There were other scenarios and explanations, and once again there was a part of the story that was in common with all of them. There would always be a friend that worked with him, that was there the night he died, that rushed him to the hospital and stayed by his side while he took his last breath. That friend would clean things up and come up with a story and present them with a death certificate and a dying man's wish. Please don't let this get to the courts, just compensate my son so he can live a decent life on his own and let me be at peace. The people knew my dad personally and trusted him, and therefore compiled with the request and trusted the death certificate that they were presented with. They have out however much money they could, and my dad and his mysterious friend would just move on to the next company. Different scenario, same ending, but different friend identity. I think the story is taking me down a rabbit hole, and I'm not sure how far down I can dig. I have to keep searching for the truth and find out who this friend is. Still, there's now a part of me that's just asking me to accept that my father gave away his life to provide a better one for me, and that I should be grateful for his genius and make some good out of it. And there's always the other part of me that worries about finding the bottom of the rabbit hole and raising it riddled with ruining lives and bloody hands. Maybe I should just stop looking, or perhaps this is the beginning of something that will never end. Next story I have known forever, that my 27 female big sister, 36 female, has always dreamt of her wedding ceremony. She loves big parties in general, but weddings are her drug of addiction. The flowers, the cake, the dress, the venue, all the preparation. This woman has served as the unofficial wedding planner of all her friend groups, 12 and Toto. Sadly, my sister has not found a guy she wants to spend the rest of her life with, and while it seems being single is not a problem for her, I think the fact that she is the only one of her friends without a wedding broke her mind. Why, you might ask? Because of the Christmas Wonder Jubilee, a magical winter ceremony. Not the real title, but believe me, it's just us cheesy. Yeah, she decided to suddenly host a huge party in honor of Christmas and all the good fortune I had in the year. And guys, let me just show you some of the things she is having at this party. A winter committee formed by her best girlfriends and family. Yeah, I'm there. We will all wear matching dresses, and we are helping with all the logistics. A private mass in a fully decorated church. She expects all the attendants to come before the actual party, because we obviously have to thank God. She's already talked to the priest so that she has a special speech during it. The winter committee will be sited in the front of the entire congregation in places of honor, a venue which coincidentally is one of the most famous wedding venues in my town, fully equipped to receive 120 guests, including her friends, our extended family, people we haven't talked to in years, her co-workers and her boss. A first dance. She and a professional dancer will have the first dance of the party, which is the most con-related waltz I have ever seen in my life. Speeches by myself, our parents, and some others, all dedicated to the good fortune in our family. And you can also talk about me if you want as the hostess. Obviously, you see she's going nuts, and while I've stopped myself from saying anything because I know this means a lot to her. The drop that spilled the glass appeared yesterday. Her dress, it's a wedding dress. There is no way of pretending it's anything else. A full-length white gown full of embroidery. I could not remain silent anymore. I told her that if she appeared with that in the church, all the guests, including her boss, will see that this is just a weird no-groom wedding and will think that she has gone insane. Obviously, this ended in a huge fight between us, and until the new order, I am banned from the wedding. I mean the Jubilee. Everyone from her friends to my parents are saying that I'm the a-hole for confronting her. But come on, I can't be the only one that sees this as crazy. Yeah, she's having one of those marrying yourself things. I think they started about a decade ago, possibly, in Japan or South Korea. It's just a big party. And it sounds like it might be fun. What you need to ask yourself is, are you going to crap on your sister and her special party? Or are you going to support her and have fun? That's all you really need to decide. There doesn't need to be confrontation or shaming or criticizing or anything else to make her feel bad. You're the a-hole. Stop making it about yourself and your opinions and support your sister, yeah. But if original poster isn't living in Japan or South Korea and her guests haven't heard of this trend, then it's naturally going to come off as unusual. At the very least, it'd be one thing if original poster sister acknowledged that she's basically having a marrying yourself party. But it sounds like she's making every effort to pretend. Otherwise, no. A holds here, you're not wrong. But let her have whatever silly and bizarre party she wants. For all you know, single and loving parties will catch on, and she'll have started the trend. I don't think you're the a-hole for thinking she's gone insane. To be honest, this post filled me with sadness, but your sister is also not the e-hole for being a bit mind-broken. But honestly, if the party is definitely happening, the only thing you can do at this point is to support her because she clearly needs support from her family and friends. You're the a-hole while you believe you are being kind by calling this out. She just wants to have a special party with the people she loves. Let the poor woman have this. She isn't doing any harm, and it's unlikely this will have any ill effect. Her co-workers may think she's a little eccentric, but as long as she's doing her job, well, it's fine. Next story. Throwaway. I-37. Female have a little sister named Valerie and a wonderful daughter named Lucy. As Lucy has entered her teen years, she has become a lot more self-conscious. She constantly compares herself to her friends at school, celebrities, etc. I currently have her attending therapy, and I also try my best to remind her that she's beautiful, just the way she is. Valerie took her daughter and Lucy to the mall yesterday when Lucy got back home. I asked her how her day went. She smiled and said that she had a good time. About 3 hours later, I went into Lucy's room to put some of her clothes away. When I opened the door, I saw Lucy laying in her bed crying. I asked her what happened. She pulled out her phone and showed me some of the pics that Valerie had posted on social media. Valerie had posted pics of herself, her daughter, and Lucy hanging out at the mall. Lucy then pointed out that Valerie had obviously photoshopped her. She made her complexion clearer, her teeth whiter, and even slimmed in her waist. Lucy also pointed out that Valerie only photoshopped her in the pics. Lucy dropped her phone on the ground and cried her eyes out. Eventually, Lucy told me that she just wanted to be alone for a while. I left and went outside because I was ready to unleash on Valerie. I called her and demanded to know why she would alter Lucy's image. She got defensive and said last time I checked I could post whatever I want on my account. I told her about how crushed Lucy was when she saw the pics. Valerie doubled down and told me that she was simply making Lucy look better. I told her that Lucy is fine just the way she is, and I don't appreciate her destroying Lucy's confidence. We kept yelling at each other and things continued to escalate. Valerie yelled that she doesn't want her daughter around Lucy, because I'm a drama queen. I yelled back, "Good. I don't want my daughter to be around a dollar store Instagram slirt anyway." She told me to go for myself, hung up on me, and blocked me everywhere. I haven't mentioned this conversation to Lucy because she's stressed out enough already. My husband says that I went too far and that I should have been more mature since I'm the big sister. Am I the a-hole edit? My insult was directed towards Valerie after she called me a drama queen. The insult was not directed towards my niece, just wanted to clear that up. Not the a-hole photoshopping. Someone without their knowledge or consent is despicable. Your sister sent your daughter a clear message that she's not good enough, not slim enough? Report the image as inappropriate and cut contact with sis. Agreed. I was plenty mad when the ones who had my senior pictures taken for a montage of the class photoshopped out the molds on my face. I already have enough trouble accepting them. Some people think occasionally that I eat like an animal from a distance. The right one above my mouth looks like some faint chocolate remnant. At least it's in the shape of the British Isles. If they were flipped around, as I have plenty to go around compared to most people I know, so to pretty much signal to me that they are mistakes to be removed, that hurt, and it was some person that I haven't even met once, not even my aunt. So yes, she absolutely deserves being laid into not the e-ho, but you're dealing with an ignorant and a whole sister. And aunt, in my opinion, she did something really sick and stupid, but she can't understand what she did. Is bad. She looks like a teenager who bases her life on social media. Sorry for that. Hope your kid gets under your influence. Not her aunt, which unfortunately is the same as a lot of people. I got the same impression. Maybe the younger sister looks at Lucy as a peer and not a niece. Maybe she doesn't know Lucy is in therapy and original poster needs to go talk to her about it, but she still reacted poorly when Opie told her about the pictures. Like I said in my comments, I was a young aunt and made my share of mistakes as well. Though nothing as bad as this, but I was always ready to listen, apologize, and learn. Valerie needs to be willing to do that as well. Not the a-hole at all, your husband is wrong. 1000% good on you for prompting defending a good self-image for your daughter and sending her to therapy as well. Her attitude towards her own body is very detrimental. Long-term, does she have a hobby? It could help her grow her self-esteem for reasons separated from her appearance, which could also help. Also, sister blocked you everywhere, trash take itself out. Don't even worry about her story. 5. Her birthday. So we ambitiously decided to host an amusement park outing for several children. The only other volunteers to help us monitor these kids were the parents of one of our daughter's friends. They were married for a long time too, although I'm not sure how long. My wife used to party in her college days. By the time I met her, she was already divorced from a short marriage. When we met, she fell head over heels for me and said she knew I was the one she was waiting for. It was easy for her to commit herself to me. And after 3 years of marriage, we conceived. She was a stay-at-home mom, working a little from home, but mostly focusing on our daughter. She brought her to the gardening club she got involved with, where they both made friends around the area. My wife also went to the grocery store and the library, but that's not too much of a surprise. What was surprising was how long she'd spend there, since around the time our daughter turned 11, my wife started spending exceptionally long amounts of time at the store or library. Even when I was home with our daughter waiting, she didn't ask us to go with her, but we didn't really want to either. I didn't expect her to do anything else at that time, and I didn't expect her to take so long on purpose still. Even with this happening, we had date nights, alone time, and family nights. My wife would put down her phone to spend time with us, and even though I saw it lighting up, I always thought it was friends she made from the gardening club, or other moms of kids our daughter played with. One day, my wife said she made a play date for our daughter at the park. I asked her if I could come. She tried to ask if I had something work-related to take care of, and I laughed awkwardly and said, no, she should have known I didn't. She texted a little before we left, and when we got to the park, another couple was there. They were the parents of our daughter's friend. Introductions were fine and friendly. I was under the impression that my wife met this woman somewhere and arranged the play date. This woman was under the impression that her husband met me somewhere and arranged the play date with our kids. These impressions were wrong, but we wouldn't find out until much later. My wife seemed to speak more directly to AP, not the woman I thought she was friends with. Then I thought I was just being obsessive, because any question in the coup's direction is for either of them to answer. But this guy seemed so eager to be the one to answer my wife, I just tried to focus on playing with the kids, distracting myself from worrying about something that amounted to nothing. My wife continued spending long amounts of time at the grocery store or library, wherever she said she was going. Sometimes my daughter and I got home from work in school to find she was out doing something. We waited for her to return but grew sick of it. When she got home one night, I confronted her. I told her there was no reason being out anywhere should take her so long, and she was missing out on time with us. We needed her home. My wife wasn't receptive to this. Like I thought she'd be, she was defensive and upset. She said she needed this time away, because for the past 12 years, she'd been stuck in the same house, without any adventure. I was shocked. I named all the adventures, or things we did, be it alone or with our child. My wife seemed to snap back to normal after my rant. She asked me for more date nights, but I knew we went out often enough anymore, and our daughter might think we didn't want to live with her at the amusement park for our daughter's birthday. We kept the group together at first, but eventually the kids wanted to go on different rides to better appease the crowd. We split into 2 groups to wait in line at Ryan's adjacent to each other, with AP and his wife in one line and me and my wife in another. After getting pretty close, my wife said she had to go to the bathroom. I watched her until she was far away enough to measure half the size of my pinky. She went into the family bathroom, which I thought was odd. Then I saw Ape jump inside the bathroom too. I screamed and yelled, but it only made the people around me jump. I had no choice but to stand in line with the kids until they got on the ride. Then I raced over to bang on the door. My wife's voice panicked when she said it was occupied. I told her it was me and demanded she let me in, but she just repeated over and over that she couldn't open the door. The ride was stopping, so I raced back to gather the kids. I couldn't believe the situation I was in, keeping watch over a bunch of kids for my daughter's birthday while my wife snuck into the bathroom with another man. What was she thinking? I got the kids to walk with me over to the bathroom, But before we got close, my wife came out and AP dodged to hide behind a tree. My wife was pale as a ghost and sweating. I think she knew she was caught. AP rejoined his wife moments before our group met up with them. I told my wife, AP, and his wife that I just saw them go into the family bathroom together. AP's wife freaked out. She asked him if it was true, and he didn't know what to say, so she started hitting him. My wife tried to stop it for the children's sake, but that was a terrible idea, because she started hitting her. Instead, I wanted so badly to jump in, but I knew I had to be the bigger person. I got security to help us get back to our cars once all the disappointed children were back to their respective homes. I ordered my wife to let me see her phone. I looked through it and found the dating app, with apps, messages funny. How neither of them mentioned being married until after they met up a few times to cheat on their spouses. I tried to use her phone to send proof to AP's wife, but she grabbed it back. I told her to pack and get out. She broke down and even handed me back her phone. She said she would do absolutely anything for a second chance to remain my wife. I told her no, but I did get the chance to send AP's wife the proof, ensuring neither of us would have to give our spouses anything in the divorce. While my wife cried, our daughter came in to ask what was going on. She broke down even more and looked at me. I didn't say a word. Of course, she couldn't bring herself to tell her what she did, but she did say she messed up badly and needed to move out of the house. They were both crying, and it was hard for me to watch. I just kept assuring myself this was what I had to do. And if I didn't, our daughter would grow up to think it was okay to cheat on the man she loved, my ex, to get to see our daughter frequently, and I'm glad for that. So it might be less dramatic for her, but it was still hard, and it was still all my ex's fault. She and AP got a place together, and the divorces were made final. Nearly 2 years later, my ex called me. I thought it would be about the next visit she had with her daughter, but it wasn't. She was sobbing, just like she did on the day I discovered her affair. She told me AP cheated on her, and she was very newly pregnant. I didn't know what advice to give her, but when she asked me if she could move back in, that was a big fat no. She cried and made it clear that her life would be miserable. I wished her luck, so she stayed in Ape's house, even though he cheated on her whenever he wanted. He doesn't help her with the baby at all, from what she tells me, and she hates her life. She didn't know how cruel and pointless life could be until she cheated on me and lost everything she took for granted. Since the divorce, I've been healing. I started dating a girl, and we've been together for a year, but she hasn't moved in. I need to make sure she's worth marrying first, and if she isn't, I'll start over again, Op. That is quite the nightmarish situation. You had a great thing going, and did your best to keep your wife happy. But she didn't think it was enough after committing herself for so long. I wish she could have learned to value this bond the two of you formed, the life you built together, and the life you two created didn't deserve to be thrown away or taken for granted. Thankfully, I think she learned that lesson, but it was too late now. It's only a bitter reminder of what she'll likely never find again. You knew how to handle this, even with how difficult it was, and you know how to adjust to whatever life throws at you. Handling problems with grace and strength is something strong men are particularly good at. I wish you the best of luck in life, and thank you for sharing your story. Now, let's get into our second story. For today, my wife and I went to Paris for our 16th wedding anniversary. I am a lawyer, so for more than 6 years, my wife didn't have to worry about money or finances. She shopped for our groceries online. Well, more than just groceries, she could have whatever she wanted, and I'm sure that made it easier for her to sit back and enjoy her marriage for a while. Our relationship was great. She never complained. Our relationship might have only lasted as long as it did because she was afraid to have her own opinions or tell me what was on her mind. I had a basic idea of her likes and dislikes, but most of the time, whatever I said was law, and I liked it that way. In Italy, we settled into our room and got ready for dinner. There was a restaurant right by the hotel. Just before we were meant to leave, one of my clients called me about something important. I told my wife to go get a table and I'd be there in a few minutes. I regret doing that, but it still doesn't change what she did. During this time, it took me over an hour to fix the issue with my client. By the time I got to the restaurant, I could see her sitting with another man at an outside table. When I approached, he respectfully greeted me and let me sit down. He said he was keeping the weirdos away until I got back. He wished us well and left. I asked her about him, and she told me she'd shoot him away once, but when it didn't come down, he sat down again. He seemed nice and charming. That's all she said about it. I noticed her texting later that night while I was on the phone. She said it was her mom giving her updates about her dad. Before we went to bed, she suggested we go to the market in the morning, calling it a charming activity, just like she described something else there at the market. I answered my phone while we strolled, and my wife looked at things. She was used to me taking phone calls and didn't interrupt. About 10 minutes must have passed, and I thought my wife was following closely behind me. But when I looked over, I realized it wasn't her. I looked around for her and she was gone. I yelled her name and she didn't come back. I tried calling her a few times until she finally answered. She apologized and said she had to go to the bathroom so badly that she ran back to the hotel. She said she'd be back in a few minutes, so I didn't need to walk back if I didn't want to. I decided to wait minutes. Later, I started walking back to the hotel and tried calling her again when I got back. She wasn't there when she answered the phone. I was really upset. I asked her what kind of game she was playing. She just laughed and said she was walking back to the market and must have missed me. She said her phone was going to die, and the call dropped. I couldn't believe it. I went back to the market and searched for her to no avail. I was extremely furious at this point. I went to the bar across from the hotel and watched our hotel ENT rants. A nice English-speaking girl started talking to me and kept me calm until I saw my wife get out of her car and kiss a goodbye. I ran up to them screaming. AP got back in the Uber and sped away yelling out the window that he'd pick her up later. I was fuming, asking her what the hell was going on. I kid you not, without missing a beat, she said. She didn't need me anymore. Apparently AP was going to take care of her from now on. He fell in love with her while I was too busy to spend time with her. I lost it. I asked if she was crazy for thinking some guy could possibly replace what we have together. A crowd was gathering to watch us all. She was thinking about was living in Paris for the rest of her life. She didn't think about me or her family back home, or what would happen if AP left her. She told me breaking up was never easy. But it was time for us to move on, and that happens to people. I called her many names and said I didn't deserve her abandonment just because she spent a few hours with a stranger. She didn't care and tried to go upstairs to her hotel room to get her stuff. I beat her there, locked her out, and started throwing her stuff off the balcony, loose clothes, jewelry cards, passport, and toiletries. As the sun set on our first day in Paris, AP came back and helped her pick up everything off the street while I yelled curses at them both when I woke up. It felt like a dream. I could hardly believe this was my reality. I looked in the mirror and decided I deserved to enjoy myself a little. I went across the street to the bar. The bartender woman I met the night before was there, and she agreed to give me a tour after I told her my story. We saw the landmarks, practiced French, went swimming, and ate croissants. So I had at least one great day in Paris. I had no idea where my wife was, and she didn't try contacting me. I suddenly remembered she had access to her bank account, so I turned off her card. Then I returned home without her. It was just 4 months later that she showed up, begging me to let her stay here for a few days at least. I laughed in her face. She said she hated what I did to her, leaving her in another country without money. I laughed again. I reminded her that she said AP was going to take care of her, and she left me for another man on our anniversary vacation. She took a deep breath and apologized. She said it didn't mean as much to her as she thought it did. It was a fantasy she wanted to live out, and nothing more. Now that she was back, she expected me to forgive her so we could continue our lives again. I showed her our divorce decree and slammed the door in her face. She had to move quickly, otherwise it probably would have broken her nose. She went to stay at her parents' house and acted like it wasn't a big deal, that she was back from her new life. They asked her a million questions, and they were devastated when they found out she didn't get anything from the divorce. She was starting over in her mid-40s with nothing, because she let her ego grow to gigantic proportions when she left me for a stranger in Paris. Opie, I am so sorry your wife betrayed you like this. It is shocking that she felt bold and delusional enough to sneak away from you and lead you on a goose chase so she could spend time alone with a stranger. She must have been a very inconsiderate and selfish woman to let herself think she could live this dream after betraying you.